All right, today I'm going to give you a little rundown of the captains of industry and robber barons, just kind of basic definitions, some overviews. We'll use James J. Hill as an example, and then we're going to talk about the assignment that we've got, can help you get started on what to do there. All right, so first off, this is not the right thing. Here we go. All right, first off, robber barons are captains of industry. Basically, we're talking about the same group of people. Okay, we're talking about the industrialists of the late 1800s, early 1900s, and it's just a historical interpretation. How do we view these people, right? So, are they a robber? Are they a stealer? Are they a bad person? Then you call them a robber baron. Basically, we're saying they're unjust, unethical, immoral businessmen. They exploit the people. They use the corrupt government, and they gain a large personal fortune doing that, right? And then the captains of industry interpretation is basically like these are intelligent opportunists whose businesses and actions ushered in a new era of progress, industry, of wealth. They're just shrewd businessmen. Without these businessmen, many of the modern luxuries we have wouldn't have been made available cheaply and efficiently, and would have delayed progress, right? So it's just a matter of perspective on how you're looking at them. And some historians look at them with, as captains of industry, some as robber barons. In general, though, a lot of historians will critique this, just looking at it like robber baron or captain of industry, because we're really only looking at, like a handful of men in the late 1800s, and they want to focus more on labor movements and everyday people and women, and we'll cover that in the late 1800s too. Just understand that this perspective is very limited. No matter what side we're on, we're taking a very limited approach. Like, what do you think about these actions? Proper history has got to be done with all of the perspective that we have in the modern age, right? Okay. Let's use James J. Hill as an example. James J. Hill he built a transcontinental railroad, right? And he built that without the Pacific Railway Act. He built that without land grants from the federal government. And so a lot of people look at James J. Hill and they say, captain of industry. He didn't have to use the government to build his railroad. He populated towns along his railroad by giving super cheap transportation to immigrants, right? So a lot of Scandinavian immigrants up in Minnesota and the Dakotas and elsewhere and along that Northern Railroad, they were able to afford that move there because James J. Hill, right? And it benefited him too. He was also very smart. He figured out that he can ship goods east and west, right? So we're starting to trade with China by the end of the late 1800s. And so he's finding out that he can take, goods, raw materials, and Chinese goods back to the east, but also like finished products that we're trading back with China back to the west. So basically, his railroad's never empty. It's very successful. It eventually, though, but see, like that's the thing. There's always some other side to this. And he didn't use federal land grants, but he built his railroad by conjoining bankrupted rail lines that were built with federal land grants. So to say that it's possible to build a railroad, a transcontinental railroad, without the help of the federal government, we're not getting the whole picture here, right? His railroad wasn't completed until 1893, much later than the transcontinental railroad that was built with the help of the federal government, right? And he also his railroad was joined into the Northern Securities Trust, which was owned by J.P. Morgan, which was a railroad monopoly, and it is known for manipulating stock and making sure that J.P. Morgan stays very, very rich. So we're still a part of all these financial decisions that are being made. And then there's the personal stuff that he did, like extorting local areas for land donations, threatening to bypass certain parts of his railroad because he'll get more favorable treatment in other towns. And this is very similar to 2 years ago, I think, when Amazon was like going to build a new headquarters. And so they were just like, okay, cities in America, why should we come here? And all the cities like, because we will not tax you and we will literally pay you millions of dollars just to come to our city and bring all your jobs. Which is not great when corporations have that much power. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, and so very similar to the modern day, what Amazon can do for a small town if they decide to build a warehouse near, right? So, all right, in general, you're trying to decide, is James J. Hill robber baron or captain of industry, right? So if you're saying he's a robber baron, you're going to focus on that extortion and manipulating stock with the Northern Securities Trust. He's just another monopoly gaining from exploitation of the working class and big money, right? On the other hand, if he's a captain of industry, he's a shrewd businessman who this is buying bankrupt rail lines and conjoining them. That's a good plan, okay? And he's now making so that the West can be settled, that Northwest can be settled. He is improving the economy in local areas. He's doing good things for immigrants. And, you know, we need big business to be able to ship goods efficiently across America. Clearly, those small bankrupt lines couldn't do it. So there's two perspectives there, right? And that's basically what we're doing for this assignment. We are, one, summarizing basically what I did at the beginning of this video, right? Captain of industry, robber baron. What is the difference? And then looking at specific evidence, right? So we're going to take like Carnegie's actions. Specifically, what did Carnegie do to be a captain of industry? What did specifically Rockefeller do to be a robber baron? And then just one paragraph at the end, like, hey, in general, what are these guys, right? So basically, you have like a couple sentence intro. Some historians say they're captains of industry. Others say they're robber barons, right? Some say they are, or like the ones who say they're captains of industry, this is the evidence they point to. The ones who say they're robber barons, this is the evidence they point to. But really, here's what they are, right? And I have a cheat sheet for you, if I can pull that up quick. Install. Take this moment to reflect on whether or not you think they are captains of industry or robber barons, I guess, while I stall. All right. It's loading. I don't know if you can see that. I'm not going to edit this. Editing video sucks. I don't know how big time YouTubers do it. Here it is. All right. So here's like your cheat sheet. Zoom takes up all my RAM. What a garbage program. Okay. So here's how you'll start it. This can be the start of your sentence, right? Number one, historians hold competing interpretations of leading industrialists in the late 1800s. Some historians refer to these men as, and you continue from there, robber barons, and you define robber barons. Others say they are captains of industry, and you define captains of industry, and then your first answer is done. And then your second paragraph is historians who view these men as captains of industry use, and then what specific evidence do you have that you've compiled? And then the same thing for number three, historians who view these men as robber barons point to what specific evidence do you have that you compiled, right? And then as a whole, you're going to just say, bam, that's your opinion. Just don't use first person. Restate the evidence and explaining why the evidence on the other side is not enough to convince you. Use past tense, use third person, and you've got yourself a pretty good piece of writing there. So you have these readings to help you. This first one's kind of long. It's a general summary, like who these guys were and what they did, from Kenneth Davis. We also have our friend Howard Zinn, right? What a guy. People's History of the United States. He'll go into some detail too, and he'll give you some specific evidence there. Yeah, like how a small refinery in Buffalo was rocked by a small explosion because Standard Oil wanted to buy them and he wouldn't let them. That's bad. Okay, anyway, so he'll go through that stuff too and give you evidence there. In general, it's a lot of just like some specific stuff that they did. And then here we have some of their philanthropy stuff that they did with their money after they had made it. For example, Carnegie donated a lot of his money before he died and tried to turn towards peace building and the League of Nations and all that kind of stuff after he was super rich, right? So how do you balance that in your opinion, the nice stuff he did with the terrible stuff? Okay, and so JP Morgan's the same thing here. JP Morgan specifically will talk about the Knickerbocker crisis and how he personally bails out the United States financial system. That's how rich he is too, which is kind of disgusting, but he's so rich that the financial system's almost dead in the water. He's just like, here's all my money, like take it and fix it. So we have those kinds of things and like they're philanthropic organizations. The big thing here though is for captains of industry, if you're struggling to understand the argument here, because that reading is going to give you a lot of bad stuff they did. It's just the idea that the modernization of the American economy, big business, regulated financial markets, that this is good. This gives us a lot of nice products for low cost. It increases the standard of living for everybody. And it ushers in a more stable economy. Like JP Morgan and his associates stabilized the American economy. And we'll talk about what the progressives did to help with that too with the Federal Reserve, at least until the end of the 1920s. But those things are good. Capital is essential to building industry, and organizing that capital in a way that is efficient and improves the standard of lives of many is good. Exploiting your workers and not paying them enough money is bad. Blowing up oil refineries, bad. So we have to kind of balance these. But if you're struggling to see why these might be interpreted as good things, it's just because the shared, like the mass resources of these people and the way that they were able to make their money did improve the lives of a lot of people, just not those that were producing the wealth. And we'll talk more about all that with unions later on. All right, if you have other questions, you're gonna have to talk to me in person. And if you're a random internet person who somehow found this YouTube channel, this is not meant for you. See ya.